the way it was both economically and security based, would have been a real breakthrough. And all the information I got at that time was that this was very real and it could be very close. So I'm concerned with the Saudi civil nuclear deal because we're losing our leverage, I think, with Saudi Arabia to take normalization with Israel and use that leverage to push them. And I think if they do, there'll be other Arab states that would follow forward. If you could, you mentioned it quickly in your testimony, but if you can expand on that, that's a real concern I had, because I think I still have hope that we can bring this regional approach together. In fact, with private conversations I've had with high representatives from the Gulf and Arab states in the region, they still privately hold hope that they could get back to some of that. And in fact, we're here talking about the Abraham Accords. I would call it the Abraham Accord in steroids. So if you could address, you mentioned that and didn't have a lot of time to expand on it, Ambassador.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Keating, for the question. Indeed, right up until October 7th, negotiations were deep underway for the possibility of a breakthrough agreement that would move towards Saudi normalization of Israel. Indeed, there was always going to be a Palestinian component of that. That was something the Saudis made clear at every stage that they wanted to see, something that would be defined maybe as a credible pathway to a Palestinian state. By the way, that's language incorporated into President Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza, as well as U.S. security commitments for Saudi Arabia, certain Saudi security commitments to the United States, and a civil nuclear agreement, which has now been just announced. So that occurred until October 7th. For understandable reasons, it was disrupted then, but actually those negotiations continued all the way well into 2024, and I took part in them from the Department of Defense. And that same structure of a deal was one we hoped we'd be able to advance if we had gotten to a hostage release and a ceasefire arrangement. Of course, those didn't happen, and so we ran out of time to do that. So what I still hope, and I think you're absolutely right, many in the region hope that breakthrough can still happen because it will be transformative. I don't think there's any change in the Saudi determination to see that there be a Palestinian component that they would define as, I don't want to speak for them, but something in the lines of a credible pathway to a Palestinian state. That's always been their position. Now, of course, the structure of the deal would probably look different. For one thing, this important point of leverage, the civil nuclear agreement, seems to have been provided without tying it to normalization. I think that may have been a mistake. There may be details behind the scenes of this diplomacy we don't know, but we've lost that card, or we've played that card, I should say. But also, in light of the Iran war, a war that many of our Gulf partners urged us not to engage in, and now feel somewhat dragged into a very destructive war that's harming their economies, that's harming their stability, and are worried about what it means for long-term U.S. commitments, whether the same kind of security arrangements that were originally going to be part of that package are still relevant. So I do think we do need to deepen a conversation with the Saudis about what a package for normalization with Israel looks like. It may not be the same kind of package we were working on in the Biden administration, but it will probably still be a package, and I have no doubt they will continue to insist to have that Palestinian component.
Yeah, I feel nothing would have isolated Iran more than that. And with 13 seconds left, I can't do that, and I'm not going to abuse the courtesy that I was given to take out a turn. So I yield back.
I'll give you a little bit. Go. You want to? I'm okay with it.
Everyone else okay? I just wanted to follow up.
Hey, I'm chair.
All right.
Hey, before you do that, I need to recognize probably one of the best friends I have in this world. It's my buddy Bruce Pearl sitting right there. I didn't see Bruce sitting right there. I was at his wedding. He has been with me when I've had some tough times and some good times, and he's always been my buddy. And I just want to recognize him.
Do you happen to know where Mr. Pearl went to high school?
I don't really care. Probably up north where y'all speak with a funny accent. I don't know where.
You graduated from the same high school I did, Sharon High School.
Yeah, okay.
Eagles.
Let me tell you a quick Bruce Pearl story.
Does this include our time? Or?
No, I'll give you some more time, but when he was coach at UT, I always remembered this. I was sitting down close in some friends' seat, Ray and Lucy, and they were kind enough to let us sit down there, and one of the kids, the ball boys, got hurt. A kid ran at one of the ball players, and I remember Coach was still coaching. The kid was down here, and he hollered at his his trainer. He said, "Get over and take care of that kid." And, you know, didn't miss a beat. And then took care of the kid, and I thought, nobody's looking. That's the real deal. So anyway, sorry, Coach. Didn't mean to embarrass you, brother.
I've
Go
got
ahead. You're
the-
recognized, sir.
I've got an entire EU delegation sitting in my office, so I am going to yield back. Thank you. And thanks for recognizing
All right, brother. I
high
guess.
school soulmate. And thanks.
All right. I recognize myself. Ambassador Friedman, thank you, brother. And I believe I visited you one time in Israel one time.
Yes, you did.
And I actually, I took an orange dreidel off your counter.
You're the one.
I am the one.
Oh, man.
Well, I'm from Tennessee, so I thought it was a gift, but I guess it wasn't. But anyway, what do you think it'd take for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords?
Well, I would make this general observation and then focus it on Saudi. What is said publicly in the Arab world and what is discussed privately are not necessarily the same thing. And a lot of positions are taken by the Saudis, other countries as well, that in private discussions are not necessarily the case. None of these countries are democracies. None of them have the kind of transparency that you would have in Israel, you would have in the United States. Every one of the Abraham Accords, if you think about it, is a triangle with the United States at the apex of the triangle, Israel, and an Arab country at the base. And every one of them is seeking the same goal, but usually for different reasons in different terms. So it depends. It depends what they want, what they need, what their perceptions are. On this point that was raised about a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia without the Abraham Accords being rolled in, without, I assume someone would mention the fact that there aren't the kind of typical guardrails that exist in other. I don't know that that's, I just heard about it today. I don't know if that's the way this will end, what this will be. There's a lot of stagecraft. There's a lot of negotiations about how this will be surfaced to the public. And so I would say it's a function of very close-knit discussions. Look, the Abraham Accords we talked about it for a year and a half. Nobody knew about it. We announced it on August 15th. It was a shock to the whole world. That's the way.
It really was. When they did the signing at the White House, I always remembered that. And the historical significance of it, all I could think was they had this incredibly good lemonade, and they had these napkins with the presidential seal, and some buddies of mine, the Jewish faith back in Knoxville, I took them all a napkin because that's all I could think to get.
But I would say this to Fed. I would say on the issue of Saudi Arabia, their primary concern is their own national security. They're in a very tough neighborhood. They're taking incoming right now from their kind of natural sworn enemy, both geopolitically and religiously their enemy, and that's what they're going to be concerned about. That's what they want, and there are ways to solve that problem. They tend not to be discussed publicly, but I do believe it's doable. And I would say, look, I've said this before, but this idea, I think Israel would love to normalize with Saudi Arabia. They're not going to commit suicide to do so. And I think they truly believe at this point that creating a Palestinian state, I think that most of them felt this way before October 7th, but post-October 7th, this is a country that believes they have no margin of error. And they're not going to do experiments or diplomatic experiments just to get the Saudis on board.